to have you here tonight. I want to have Superintendent Laura Joss start us off, please.
Great, thank you, Charlie. And Charlie's too modest. He's our relatively new Chief of Communications and External Affairs. So you'll be hearing a little bit more from Charlie in a second. But I'm Laura Joss. I'm the General Superintendent of Golden Gate NRA, National Recreation Area, which includes Muir Woods and Fort Point. So I'm really appreciative that y'all have taken time out of your busy personal schedules to be with us tonight and hear some great updates about the park and how the Muir Woods MOU is doing. So I'll be juggling my microphone here, but I do want to thank the Old Mill School for hosting us. And is there anyone here from the school that we can thank personally? Okay. Well, for safety purposes, I want to let you know that the restrooms for the boys, it's out this door and just down a little ways to your right. And if the lights don't go on right away, they're motion activated, so proceed in. And for the girls, oh, thank you, Chuck. Is this working? Oh, yeah, perfect, okay. And for the girls, go out this door and down, and then on your left is the girls' room. And then the emergency exit is just in the back of the room. And we are very appreciative of all the park Muir Woods neighbors that have come out tonight to hear these updates, and for all of you that have worked with us on this process of a memorandum of understanding for Muir Woods for so long. Two of the key players in that process we're very lucky to have here tonight. First, I'd like to recognize Marin County Supervisor Dennis Rodoni. And Dennis, would you like to say any words tonight? Sure. Okay, yeah, sure. You bet. Whatever you prefer.
Thank you, Laura. I'm Dennis Rodoni. I'm District 4 Supervisor, which includes Muir Woods in my district. I'm really happy to be here and welcome you here tonight. And with me tonight is Kate Sears, who she's going to get introduced in a minute, but we're right in her district here. So I'm very happy to be with you and looking forward to the presentation and hearing more of the update. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dennis. And yeah, Kate Sears, thank you so much for being here tonight. Kate told me she learned to ride her bike on this street right out here. So a lot of great experience in the room. I also want to thank one of our key partners, and that's One TAM. And I know many of you are aware of One TAM, but who in the room have either volunteered or do now work for One TAM? Volunteering with her. Okay, at the One TAM table? Yeah. No, not. Thank you. All right, it's a great organization and a really strong partner with us, so we appreciate your support as well. And then we're very lucky to have here with us tonight Amy Schroeder is the senior field rep from Congressman Huffman's office. Amy, where did you go? Oh, great. So Amy's here if anyone has questions for her later. And I'd like to acknowledge the strong partnership we have with Marin Transit in operating the Muir Woods shuttle. And Nancy Whalen, are you here? Thank you, Nancy, for being here and all your hard work. It's a very important partnership. So with that, I think I will, I do want to recognize that service is now, has been expanded to year-round weekends and had another perfect safety record. So thank you. And we have brought along much of our National Park Service team tonight. We have some new faces besides Charlie. Allison Forrestal in the back of the room. Allison is our new Chief of Natural Resources. And Gordon White, where did Gordon go? Oh, there he is. Gordon White is our new Chief of Cultural Resources. He comes to us from Point Reyes. Barbara Butler is our new Chief of Project Management. And just to shout out, Mia Monroe in the back is our Marin County Liaison. And I know he's not really new anymore, but David Shifsky in the back of the room is our Chief Ranger. He also came to us from Point Reyes. So as we begin this update about the MOU with the County of Marin, I want to briefly mention some other activities that we have had going on in the park, in the National Recreation Area recently. Golden Gate is one of 418 parks in the units in the National Park System. We're very proud of all of them. And we have some key updates for you numerically about the park. And I know, I apologize, it's a little hard to read the screen. We found if we shut the lights off, though, it was way too dark in here. So I'll just read a couple of these. The park itself is about 80,000 acres, and it spans 60 miles and 3 counties. We get 16.8 million visitors. Last year, we were the second most visited national park unit in the country. We have about 300 employees, 1,200 plus plant and animal species, 1,200 historic structures, and more than 35 distinct park sites. And you'll hear me use the term fort quite a bit as we go through this presentation. I've learned recently we have 9 forts in the park itself. So these, we couldn't do what we do without key partners like One Tam, but we also have a very strong partner with the Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy. And they're our nonprofit partner. So looking at San Francisco, we offer a lot of activities to San Francisco visitors and the community members themselves. And at the Presidio, which is kind of that green area in the center of that slide, we work with hand in hand with the Presidio Trust, who manages the Presidio area, to plan for a seamless visitor experience from the coastal park areas to the heart of the Presidio. Another important site in the park is Alcatraz. We have quite a lot of activity going on right now with the Alcatraz embarkation. That's where the ferry embarks to take over 1.7 million visitors to Alcatraz every year. I'm thrilled to report that we finalized our agreement with the Port of San Francisco and an MOU with the City of Sausalito and our partner, the Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy. The Conservancy will begin planning for the new embarkation facility in May of 2019. They're gonna start their new upgrades of the Alcatraz embarkation site to honor this important historic district and provide a welcoming visitor experience. We get a lot of visitors who want to go out to Alcatraz and can't get tickets onto the ferry because of the capacity, and so we're putting together an interpretive area right at the embarkation so that they can learn about Alcatraz whether they go out to the island or not. And we're also, that improvement is a $30 million project that we're bringing to the port thanks to our partners. So moving south, San Mateo County is a very important part of Golden Gate NRA. We offer a lot of resource protection, and our long-term goal in this area is to be a connection to other open space lands. So this is a nice overview of the Golden Gate Bridge leading into Marin County. And tonight we are going to focus on Marin County and Muir Woods. Muir Woods was established in 1908 by President Teddy Roosevelt. It comprises 554 acres. And this site receives 1.1 million visitors a year. So we're really delighted that you've taken time out of your week to hear more about Muir Woods and our plans for the upcoming year. And I want to call out again with this next slide, One Tam. We do work with partners and volunteers to accomplish our mission. We couldn't do it without them. We have a large and complex operation, and I do want to thank everyone who has worked with the One Tam program in the past, and hand the mic over to Charlie, who will give us some more specific updates. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Has everybody seen this sort of image talking about a variety of projects going on in the last 3 or 4 years? So it's part of the Redwood Renewal, and it's not just one particular project, but a whole host of projects that will help rehabilitate the park, make sure that salmon habitat and redwoods are preserved. And we've got quite a number of folks, subject matter experts here, that if you want to talk about any particular part of that. But we hope that most of your questions will be answered during the course of the presentation. If you have questions, you can just hold them to the end, and then if you want to have a one-on-one conversation conversation with any of our staff about something that's not necessarily related to Muir Woods or the MOU, but is really got you up at night, then that's what we're here for. So thank you for that. So major projects that we're going to talk about, some are more interesting than others, but the water and wastewater rehabilitation project, the salmon habitat enhancement and the bridge replacement, sustainable access, and then road and bridge improvements. We just started this fall in the water and sewage treatment project, and so it's not super exciting, but for infrastructure for a park of this age, it's huge in making sure we're responsible for our water and wastewater and moving facilities in an engineered and a sustainable way. So this is a $2.6 million project, and it consolidates 2 existing wastewater pump stations into a single pump station. It'll provide for more efficient use of that space at Muir Woods. It will address odor issues that we've heard from locals and also in the community of Tamalpais. It started in September of 2018, and we hope it'll be completed in the summer of 2019. And of course, we will be halting operations as we need to if they are producing excess noise for wildlife habitat. Another one of our redwood renewal projects is our salmon habitat restoration. And this is going to improve juvenile salmon habitat. The environmental compliance, which we're required to do before we swing any hammers or do any projects, is complete. And it was just announced last week. That's the precursor for anything that we do, even for requesting funding for the construction phase. So we're really happy to be able to announce at this meeting that that's been completed. What's going to happen starting in August of 2019 is in Redwood Creek we'll remove 7 segments of riprap up streets of bridge number 3, remove one side of the loop trail at Cathedral Grove, and in Muir Woods, like a lot of early national parks, early planners and designers said, we're going to put all the facilities right next to the resource. That's very common throughout our national parks and a lot of other public lands. And so what we're going to do is just bring it away from the resource, make sure that we undo stream changes that we don't consider effective and healthy for the salmon population. And relocate large wood into the channel to improve salmon habitat. The goal is to bury riprap into 5 discrete locations, and so that we're going to be forming deep pools for fish in the channel bed. And now I want to introduce Eric Steiger, Assistant Director of DPW, for our next round. You want to do this, or do you want me to click?
Oh, you can click.
Okay.
Let's take this off. Can everybody hear me okay? So welcome and thank you for coming out tonight on a very cold evening. I appreciate you guys coming out. My name again is Eric Steiger. I'm an Assistant Director with the Department of Public Works for the County of Marin. And I'm excited to be here tonight, and part of the team is going to be providing an update on the Memorandum of Understanding between the Park Service and the County of Marin. Part of this team also includes Bob Goralka, our Principal Civil Engineer, and Traffic Engineer. He's in the back there. So we were answering some questions before the meeting got started, and unfortunately Bob's going to have to leave around 7:15, but I'll be available for the Q&A at that point as well. So we're doing a joint presentation tonight, and I just want to emphasize that it reflects on the close collaboration that we've had all along with the Park Service, or between the Park Service and the County of Marin, from developing the MOU to actually implementing the MOU in the last few years. We usually have 2 meetings a year, 2 community meetings a year. The last one we had was before the Board of Supervisors back in June. The first slide here. So I just have a couple of slides tonight. Just want to recap the history behind the Memorandum of Understanding and how it was developed. And I think many of you were involved in the early days. There's been, over the years, a lot of work done in the general area of the River Creek watershed and the communities around that. Most notably, Marin Transit and the start of the Muir Woods shuttle back in the early 2000s. And there were a lot of ideas floating around on what should be done to try to address some of the challenges out there. And in 2014, Congressman Huffman put together an ad hoc committee, kind of a working group, a cross-section of people. It was a very large group. We had representatives from Muir Beach, Tam Valley, environmental groups, of course the government agencies from Marin Transit, Parks, County Marin, state parks. And that effort led to something that was called the Principle of Agreement that formulated kind of the overarching goals, what we wanted to do in the area, as well as that we would develop a memorandum of understanding between, two-party memorandum of understanding between the county and the Park Service. Some of those goals were to preserve and enhance the health of the River Creek watershed, to reduce congestion, not only in the vicinity of Muir Woods, but also in the communities, leading to the Muir Woods. Improve traffic safety. I'm sure many of you recall how we had cars sliding off the road because they were parking in the wrong places and people walking both directions in the lanes of traffic, so we needed to address traffic safety. And then also to improve public transit and better manage buses out there, particularly commercial buses. So those were some of the overarching goals that are built into the details of the memorandum of understanding. Let's go back one, if we can. So the MOU was brought before the board. We had 2 meetings in June 2015, and it was approved, and then that sort of led or paved the way for the Park Service to complete some environmental studies in the summer and fall of 2015. Meanwhile, the county was also adopting additional parking restrictions to try to manage the parking out there, raising the fines that we were for the parking violations, and also developing plans and specifications for these bollards, or we call those wooden posts that you see out there today. And that was all in an effort to try to control the parking, prevent people from parking where they shouldn't be parking, get parking away from the creek, and allow vegetation to grow behind these bollards. So we developed those plans and specs, and again, in the close collaboration that we have with the Park Service, we turned those plans and specs over to the Park Service, and they actually built the bollard system out there in December, January, February or so of early 2016. And then we moved on to the procurement process, which was developing the prospectus and advertising and selecting a concessionaire, and that's really the Park Service's effort. And we started the reservation system this year. So that was really 2 years, basically, when the environmental work was done to actually having the reservation system up and running. So I think that's pretty quick in my mind, getting something off the ground like that. And it was phased in, and the second phase was the commercial carrier reservation system that started in May. Now, this is a summary of the key points of the MOU. By the way, if you're interested, it is posted on our website. You can go to Public Works and Projects to actually see the MOU. But the main thing is that it created, laid out that the Park Service would create a reservation system for visitors, and that's been done. It's up and running, and we're going to hear more about it from Sally here in a moment. That the Park Service would manage the reservation system to reduce peak visitation, and we're going to see that tonight as well. Creating a parking management corridor for parking permits, and that's been done as well. The county adopted an ordinance, and the Park Service can regulate parking through permits along a certain stretch of Frank Valley and Muir Woods. And then, of course, we're trying to get the vehicles off of the road there, and so there's a goal to bring it down to 30 spaces within 7 years. But there's intermediate goals as well, and we've met those goals. And then it can change with time as well as work goes on in the parking lots, and so you can expect that in the future. The next bullet there, the sheriff and the Park Service executed a separate side agreement to provide authority to the Park Service for parking violations and enforcement, and they added staff and Before the reservation system came on, we knew it was going to be a challenge to try to manage the parking because we restricted the number of parking areas and we still had just about as many people coming. Citations definitely spiked in 2017, but I think they've gone down to very low levels nowadays. And I think whenever I've been out there, there's hardly any vehicles parked along the woods or Frank Valley Road. And of course, to continue to collaborate ongoing with Redwood Creek water quality and improving public transit and public messaging. So those are some of the highlights, part of the MOU, and I think we've done a pretty good job of implementing them. And next up, I believe, is Sally from the Park Service, and she's going to give you more detail of how the reservation system.
Not so fast, Eric.
Oh, sorry.
A little bird told me that you are getting ready to retire.
Oh, that's right.
And here is the little bird to talk more about that and conduct the most important government business we do, the public humiliation before retirement.
I just wanted a quick word to acknowledge one of the behind-the-scenes benefits of the MOU, which is the close relationship that Eric fostered between the county and the National Park Service. We meet regularly. We have tackled a number of things, and I just wanted to publicly acknowledge and appreciate your leadership there. So thank you very much, Eric, and we're going to really miss you. But we know you haven't gone very far because he has a daughter with the National Park Service, so we're very, very proud. So thank you.
And I'd like to introduce Sally Golub, who's with our business management operation. She's going to talk a little bit more about the reservation system. Sally.
Thank you, Charlie. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm Sally Golub. I work for the Business Management Division at Golden Gate National Recreation Area. And I'm going to show you a bunch of graphs, but don't worry, I will explain what all of them mean. So before that, Eric gave us a really nice overview of the history of the Memorandum of Understanding, and I'll bring that to where we are today with the reservation system. So just about a year ago, on-site parking management began at Muir Woods, and then in January is when reservations became required for all shuttle riders and for parking a vehicle at Muir Woods. January is also when the shuttle began to operate year-round, which is a really key aspect of the reservation system and overall this project. And that shuttle runs on weekends year-round as well as during the weekdays and the key summer weeks. Then in May is when our commercial carrier reservation system took effect. So commercial carriers are essentially the commercial tour companies that are bringing visitors to Muir Woods on a tour. And May is also when pre-purchase entrance fees became possible. So when a visitor is making their parking or shuttle reservation online, they can simultaneously purchase their park entrance fee to reduce that transaction and get into the woods more easily, because that's what we want to do. How many of you here have used the Go Muir Woods website or the parking and shuttle reservation system? Show of hands, make them higher. Okay, some of you, great. So for some of you, this will be a review. For others, it perhaps might be new. The parking and shuttle reservation system is operated under a concession contract by Ace Parking. And they are the ones that manage parking on site every day of the year, and they're the ones who manage the reservation system, which is primarily online, but also available by phone for those who don't want to make their reservation online. So when visitors make their reservation online, they're reserving an arrival window. So they might reserve 8:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. or 1 to 1:30 p.m. That's the time in which they should arrive to Muir Woods to park or arrive to take the shuttle. And then we do not limit their length of stay, so if you have to stay all day at the woods, that's okay. And that was very intentional. So it's a reservation by arrival window, and generally speaking, the parking ambassadors have been quite flexible. If someone is 5, 10 minutes late, 15 minutes late, that's okay, they're not gonna turn that visitor away. The parking reservations are $8 per vehicle or $3 per shuttle rider, and that's specifically adults. Children ages 15 and under are free to take the shuttle. That's also very important to us. And the shuttle used to be $5 and is now $3, so that was also a key aspect of providing that access opportunity. Once a reservation is made and you're ready to go to the woods, you download it onto your phone or you print it in advance, then you show up to the woods and you show it to a parking ambassador, they scan you in, and then you park and have your wonderful Muir Woods experience. A key aspect of the system has been extensive outreach that was done leading up to the reservation system launch and then throughout the past year. That outreach is done both by the park as well as by the Ace Parking, the concessionaire, and other partners as well. And that's been really important. Accepting visitor feedback is really important. We're constantly learning and adapting as necessary. So the reservation system is really two reservation systems. There's the private vehicle and shuttle system, and then there's this commercial carrier system. The commercial carrier system is managed by the park through recreation.gov, which perhaps some of you have used to make a, park, Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management reservation in the past at a campground or something like that. So these reservations are made on recreation.gov. A commercial use authorization is required for access. Commercial use authorizations are used park-wide. It's an authorization that allows certain business entities to operate their business in a park. These reservations, unlike the private reservations, are made for a specific time and a specific space. So, as you can see in this photo, it's space 12. And National Park Service staff monitors this parking area and engages with commercial carriers on site as necessary if someone doesn't have a reservation. And they're the ones who communicate with companies as well to ensure everyone's brought up to speed on the changes at Muir Woods. We've seen really strong compliance so far, so we've seen a 50% increase in the number of companies with a commercial use authorization, and generally we're seeing good compliance on site. We see some limited confusion from those companies that say come to Muir Woods once or twice a year, and so our outreach didn't necessarily reach them. They're coming in from further away, or they're driving in from Southern California, something like that. So we're doing a lot of work with those companies as well who weren't necessarily familiar with the system. And again, outreach, receiving feedback from companies, and learning and adapting as necessary. Don't worry, I will explain this graph. Don't be daunted. So a very key aspect of the reservation system is to manage peak visitation levels, to not have any more 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 person days, because the woods, the resource really can't handle that many people. So what you're seeing here is the black line is the visitor profile that was established in the environmental assessment. So you can think of that as our target population, target visitation. The orange line is visitation in 2017, and the blue line is 2018, this past year. You'll see that this graph ends at the end of October because we don't have November data yet. So the really important takeaway of this graph is you see all of these orange spikes, 6,000 day, 6,500 visitors this day. All of these orange spikes are no more. So we really brought the visitation on those peak days to a manageable level that's going to have less of a negative impact on the resource, on parking and congestion and traffic and safety hazards. So we really see this first year as a success in reaching this goal. We are a little surprised to see that there tends to be a dip. You'll see the blue tends to be a dip under the orange on those weekdays as well. The peaks are the weekends and the troughs are the weekdays. And we're not totally sure why that is. We're looking further into that to analyze that and see why there tend to be a dip on weekdays as well, because we don't want that to be the case too much. So we are continuing to work, and we will adjust as necessary. As I've said, another key aspect of the reservation system is the expanded shuttle service. So what you see here, the overall blue bar is the total shuttle capacity in these months from February to October. I excluded January since the expanded shuttle service started halfway through January. And then the dark blue is utilization. So what we're seeing is that the shuttle is highly utilized. We're seeing anywhere from a 70 to 90% use of the shuttle capacity, which means that it's a very popular service, that when parking reservations are full, people are turning to the shuttle and using it, that those who don't have personal vehicles are using it, so we see this as a really good thing. And this year we're on target to have about 90 to 100,000 visitors arriving to Muir Woods by shuttle, and that's round trip. So an ancillary benefit to the reservation system is that we're able to collect data in a way that we haven't been able to historically. We're able to understand what the visitor's thinking a bit more. So starting in May, Ace Parking, the concessionaire that runs the Go Muir Woods reservation system, they push out an optional survey to anyone who's used the Go Muir Woods website and made a reservation for parking or the shuttle. And it comes to them within 24 hours to the email where they made their reservation, and it asks a handful of questions. So full disclosure, that type of survey is not, it's not perfect data, it's opt-in. Right now it's only in English. We'd like to expand it to more languages in the future. But so we know that this data is flawed, but it does show some helpful trends. So one of the questions in the survey is, how was your experience parking at, where did you hear about the Muir Woods reservation system? And what we're seeing is that the majority of visitors are hearing about the reservation system through the National Park Service website. And then the second most popular way to hear about the reservation system is word of mouth, so through friends or family. And another important data point is didn't know until arrival. So those are the visitors who show up at Muir Woods without a reservation, not knowing that they would need one, and they arrive and they're going to be disappointed that they need a reservation. 7%, we would love for that to be 0%, but in the grand scheme of things, that is pretty good, and we're going to continue to work on that until that slowly decreases, and we're very much keeping an eye on that. So, the other question, which I already started saying, how was your experience parking at or taking the shuttle to Muir Woods? So this is not to be confused with the question of how your overall Muir Woods experience is. That's a different question. This one is really your experience parking there or taking the shuttle. And overall we have, so if you combine very good and good, we have 84% positive feedback about parking or taking the shuttle to Muir Woods. So while we would love for this to be 100%, overall, 84% positive after the first year of a brand new system, we see as overall a very good thing. That's the vast majority. Again, we would like for that to be 100%, and we will work toward that. But this is good news after the first year. So some data about the commercial carrier system. Do we have any CUA holders here with us today? Okay, a number of people, great. So hopefully you will find this interesting. So the commercial carrier system, so again, this is the commercial operators bringing visitors to Muir Woods. There are 12 spaces in total. 6 of them are large vehicle spaces, 6 are small to medium spaces. And during the peak season, there are 60 possible reservations to make. So that's the quota line that you see here during the peak season, that brownish yellow line, and then that's 52 spaces in the low season. So that's total number of commercial vehicles that can come to Muir Woods in a day. And then the purple line here is the use from mid-May when the system took effect through the end of September. And what we're seeing is you know, between 20 to 40, maybe a little more than 40 commercial vehicles per day. We're seeing that there is unused capacity, so if someone wants to participate in this reservation system and follow that process, that is available. There are options. And what this is also saying, you know, it's about 50%, a little more than 50% of the large, more bus-sized vehicles, and about, you know, a little under 50% of the smaller vehicles. So on any given day, say one of the, you know, a peak weekend day of about 40 reservations, maybe there will be 20 to 25 large buses coming down to Muir Woods in a day. So another graph about the commercial system. This is taking a look at, don't worry if you can't read the numbers. Just think about this as general trend throughout the day. So we have 8 a.m. beginning of the day till 8 p.m. at the end of the day. What we see is that there are popular times to visit as a commercial tour company. 10 a.m. is the most popular time, and there's definitely a larger cluster in the morning. And then 2 p.m. is this other significant time when there's a lot of demand for these commercial tour visits. The intention of the reservation system is really to flatten this out as much as possible. It used to be that this graph went a little bit more like that. So we are in the process of smoothing it out. But that is, you know, the intention, to really smooth visitation and have it be a constant flow into the woods instead of everyone arriving at once and then no one arriving at the less popular times. And if you are a CUA holder, there are opportunities if you want to be the company that sells the 1 p.m. tour that is available to you. Okay. Okay, so those are all the graphs that I'm going to show you tonight. But I have more sometime if you'd like to see them. So some of the successes of the reservation system after almost a first full year of operation. Overall, we have really positive visitor feedback. That survey I was talking about earlier, there is an option to leave an open comment at the end, which can be very entertaining to read. And there are a lot of very positive comments about, I live in the area, I used to visit Muir Woods many years ago, and I haven't gone in recent years because it's been so crowded, and it's so nice to visit again now that it's a bit more quiet and more manageable to show up. We see a number of comments like that. And we're getting a lot of comments that the experience in the woods is so much better, that it's quieter inside the woods. And that's really the experience that we care about, that inspiring experience that Muir Woods was intended to provide for the public. We are definitely seeing reduced traffic and congestion on Muir Woods Road. We're seeing reduced illegal parking on the road. We're seeing fewer incidents like vehicle break-ins. I think there's been like one vehicle break-in this year where there used to be very frequent. And we're seeing fewer visitor injuries. There's this great opportunity for National Park Service staff, like the interpretive and education rangers, to return to the intent of their positions, which is to, teach visitors about the woods, give ranger talks. They are able to do that again instead of directing traffic, which became a big part of their job for a while. And we have special provisions for schools and certain outreach groups, so we've ensured that the system doesn't negatively impact their ability to come to Muir Woods, because that was really important. There are, of course, opportunities for growth. So as I've discussed, there are visitors who arrive without reservations, and unfortunately those visitors are told, if reservations are sold out for the day, like when you go to a restaurant, they're told, sorry, we're full today. If the shuttle's running and there's availability on the shuttle, then they'll be told to go take the shuttle. If the shuttle isn't running that day, then they'll be asked to come visit another day, and that is disappointing to a visitor. If there is availability, they will be told to make a reservation, which does require finding cell service, which is challenging in that area, as most of you are probably aware. And this puts Ace Parking, the company that operates the concession contract, they're in that difficult position of, wanting to answer visitor questions, but also trying to keep traffic moving. So we've gotten feedback that's saying, the parking attendants are too nice. They're answering all of the visitors' questions, and they're telling them what they can do on their day since they can't visit Muir Woods today. And that's really lovely customer service, but we need them to move traffic along. So that's a balance that's a bit challenging. And we are continuing to work as well with taxi and rideshare companies that don't quite fit into either system, and we're very much trying to manage that and find the best solutions there. So, the reservation system goals. Eric gave a nice summary of the MOU and what those goals were. And the reservation system goals to manage peak visitation levels, which I already discussed, to improve the visitor experience, particularly that experience inside the woods, to reduce impacts on the natural resources, on the local community, and to reduce safety hazards. And what we've seen in this first year is that we are achieving all of these goals, and we're moving forward, and it's really exciting to be able to say that yes, we've achieved all of these goals, but of course we are finding ways to continue to improve and make the system as best as it can be. Thank you. I'm going to pass this back to Charlie.
Eric, before you retire, can you unput this microphone for me? You're the man. Okay. So just to touch on a couple of things that Sally mentioned, remember what got us here, and that is protection of the redwood groves. And we also talked earlier in the presentation, we're now an international destination. So we're not the only old growth redwood grove that's only 45 minutes from San Francisco. We're constantly making that point to visitors that are other groves, but we have been on the map for many, many years as all of you that live in the communities. So our responsibility is to take care of the resources not for 10 years from now or 50, but 100 years from now, and manage for growth that's not going away. Obviously, we got here because of those spikes, of those 7,000 person days when all we were doing is parking cars. So we appreciate your patience, and we are hoping that all of these projects that we're working on will provide for a very different Muir Woods by 2021. So we have also announced a fee increase that takes place on January, and good to hear that most of you have received some notice of that. We initially announced that in in 2017. We got a year deferral from our national office to postpone it. We announced it again in April of 2018, and it'll take effect in January of 2019. This is a way, 80% of those fees will stay here locally. So it is a way to fund those projects. It is a way to help with our deferred maintenance, and it also supports those parks that do not collect fees. So we've got a whole host of subject matter experts. Want to leave a little bit of time for question and answers related to the kind of things that we're talking about, and also want to just make sure that we recognize some new special guests that we have. Ms. Mowry from the State Parks Superintendent. Can you stand up? Hi, yeah, we spotted you. And we first met at a one-TAM meeting a few months ago. So wanted to say hello and welcome to the community, and thank you for being here. Again, if you have questions about the presentation, then now is a good time to do question and answers. And then if it is something not necessarily related to Muir Woods, it's still a great time to talk to some of our division staff or our subject matter experts. And I'm going to have Mia help me to make sure that everybody gets a chance and that everybody gets a turn. Yeah.
Hi, I live at Muir Beach, and on the really beautiful weekends, when you're trying to get off the beach, because of the traffic from Stinson, some of us try to go through Frank Valley Road to Muir Woods Road, and the line of cars going both ways is ridiculous, and I'm wondering if that has to do with the POVs having no time limit on how long they can stay there. Because other people who have reservations at, say, an hour after, sometimes wait there for 2 hours, and the traffic goes all the way up to Four Corners, all the way down past Muir Beach, up Highway 1 to Three Corners. So that is an issue, and it's an issue on the really beautiful days. And I'm thinking of all that SOx and NOx from those idling cars going into Muir Woods, which it cannot be a good thing for it. So I want to know why the POVs have unlimited time.
So it sounds like there's a question and also you're proposing a solution. So folks that are, this is about traffic on Frank Valley Road. Is there a connection? And Highway 1. Is there a connection between how long we allow folks to stay at Muir Woods and the sheer amount of traffic? Of course, anybody that goes in has to come out. We see that same issue with the headlands, but it sounds like you're wondering if there's a connection related to the stay. Personally, I doubt anybody's spending 8 hours in Muir Woods, but who wants to answer that question on the average stay? I'm pretty sure the average stay is about 90 minutes, 2 hours at that, because they're from out of town and they're going to other things. But maybe Sally, you could talk about if there's any connection between those long stays and traffic.
Sure. So, as discussed, the privately owned vehicle reservation system is managed under a concession contract. They have an adaptive management system, which is how many vehicle reservations they're selling by time slot. And they do track when the parking lots are all full. And for the most part this past year, there have been very few instances when the parking lots have actually been completely full. And when that did happen, within a day or two, they adjusted how those reservations are released and how they're selling the reservations to fix that issue. There was a brief period of time when 2 p.m. they were overselling, and so they shifted how they were selling them so that there wouldn't be an oversell. So generally there have not been, there's only been a handful of instances that have been recorded as there being more vehicles than there are parking spaces. So the length of stay and allowing visitors to stay as long as they want, not being worried about returning to their car, that would not be the issue that I would identify. There's definitely room for improvement for the speed at which cars, interact with someone and are parked in a vehicle. There's also the challenge of, as I've mentioned, visitors arriving without a reservation, and that requires a conversation, explaining that there is this reservation system, that one needs a reservation, and that, 30-second conversation, if it has to happen with 10 cars, it can create a little bit of a backup. Again, those who are managing parking on site, they really have to balance between giving the information that someone wants, but also moving traffic along. We've really been encouraging them to move traffic along and to not have too long of a conversation, but then of course that person is upset that they're being told to drive away when they want their questions answered.
Okay, so
Follow up on that.
yeah, I want to just summarize what I'm hearing though is that the concessionaire doesn't cover their costs or make money by parking spaces that are not moving. and that we are trying to avoid somebody going in completely without any directions at all and ending up at Muir Beach. So you're hearing that we've got parking staff that are actually trying, but I'm not giving it as an excuse, but that's what I heard. But it sounds like you need a follow-on.
You're missing the question. For a local resident who's trying to get off the beach or coming back to the beach, a lot of people use those two roads to get to the coast. They're not all going to Muir Woods. They're going to Stinson or they're going to the city. So when the backup starts to happen, it's just not people with reservations
Right.
that are in line. It's people who are trying to get to the doctors,
It's a safety issue.
and it is a safety issue.
Given the wildfires, it's a huge.
Yeah, no, you're saying, what do we do when we're trapped in there by all those tourists?
Yeah, but it's just not only the tourists, it's all the residents who want to get
Yeah,
off the beach.
I
or
have
people
no
from the
idea
Bay
how we would
Area.
answer that.
Well, I think it's
I
a
have-
big issue that you need to consider. It
Yeah.
should be looked
Thank
at
you for
carefully.
bringing that up, and Sally did a good job of describing the interim efforts that we're making. And in 2020, one piece of redwood renewal will be underway, and that's what we fondly call SAP, the Sustainable Access Plan, and that is the new parking lots with queuing areas to take the Muir Woods reservation processing off the road entirely, and we expect that a lot of that congestion will evaporate when that part of the redwood renewal is implemented. And Bob Garalka said he might have something to add on it too.
Actually, I'm just echoing what Leah was saying, because National Parks is working on parking lot design. County is assisting in the review, and as part of it, they will be putting in some queue lanes alongside Muir Woods Road, part of their existing parking lot, to take some of that traffic that's waiting to get into the parking lot off the road to allow a better free flow on Muir Woods Road. Unfortunately, those are about 2 years away before those are done. And we're working on it and see what other measures can be done in the interim, but that is something that has been flagged, and there's some design efforts in place to address that.
And just a reminder, we're using the same infrastructure that's been there for 70 or 80 years, right?
No, it's worse than that.
It's
Because the road has fallen away.
Well, right, okay, right, the same or worse that's been there for a long period of time. So,
your county representatives here, what's the intention for dealing with the condition of Muir Woods, Frank?
so did I finish with your question before we, yeah, so,
Yeah, I would like to know that you're seriously considering the access for locals, whether they're coming from, the east.
not only do we seriously consider it, but we have the same problem with our own staff at Rodeo Beach at Marine Headlands. So you have all these visitors going to the headlands to take selfies, to go out to Rodeo Beach, and our own staff have the same problem, and our partners. So anytime you are the focus of all these international visitors, you're going to have that congestion, and no, it's not okay, but I don't really know the answer to that, other than all of us in the Bay Area, we are subject to the stresses and strains of all of our visitors from out of the state. So yes, so I think that's.
Well, I'd like to give a shout out to Dave Shifsky and his staff, because this summer, when Muir Beach people brought up the congestion issues at Pacific Way and Highway 1, Dave and his staff found funding to provide a parking ambassador to keep the traffic flowing at that intersection. And I heard from many people at Muir Beach that it made a big difference. So thank you, Dave, for working to keep the flow going during these interim phases. Michael, did you have something else you wanted to bring up?
No, it's just the condition of the road.
So the condition of the road.
That makes it worse than it's been before, and we see no intention or plan right now for improving it,
We have Bob Garalka from the county to address that.
which is why I'm hollering. I'm sorry.
And you're right, the condition on Muir Woods Road is bad. There's areas where slopes have eroded away. We have been successful in working with FHWA and have received FLAP grants, and there is a project in design phase right now through FHWA to improve Muir Woods Road, the entire length actually, to repave it, to fix the slopes. Unfortunately, in terms of the design of the project,
it is next to, I shouldn't say unfortunately, it's just more complicated engineering-wise because we have Redwood Creek and we have to design the improvements to make sure we don't harm Redwood Creek, including the culverts that go under the road, and there's quite a few of those. We also have state parks, which is the property owner on the other sides of the road, so it's another player.
Yes.
They've been working in concept with the design and finally worked down agreement for all the culverts. And so that was one of the big hurdles to moving that design forward. So that, I can say, has been done. There's agreement with state parks. And now they're working on finalizing the design, which probably take the rest of the year. And then the construction window is very short with the spotted owl and the other environmental constraints. And so because of that construction window, the actual construction, I believe, is slated to start in 2022, I believe. Is it?
22? Did you say 22?
Yes.
That's 14 years that one section by Santos Meadow has been out. And now there's that second section further down the road that's going. And then there's a third section. And so you have all these cars stopping at all those, idling and then going forward, idling and going forward. I mean,
I understand. All I can say is we're going through the process. We've reached one major part of that process is getting agreement from state parks, which is the property owner on either side and has their constraints and issues, and also environmental. It's a very complicated design with the potential impacts to the creek. So that part's been done, and they're finalizing the other parts of the design, and then we get into the construction window where we're allowed to work and not work. And so that's if they can go faster, they definitely will. But that's right now the anticipated schedule.
Good.
Okay, yep, we'll stay on that side of the room, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to just give a holler.
So, I can talk loud enough, I think. Sally, is it? Yeah, you alluded to still having to work with taxis, rideshare companies. So I live in Muir Beach and hang out there a lot. Sometimes what I notice is people out there who's trying to get a cell phone signal because they haven't got a reservation. They finally get a cell phone signal, reservation is available, so they call Uber. Do you have any idea? Can you just expand like what you're doing to try to deal with that situation?
Is it the question about cell reception, or is it the question about ride share?
Ride share.
So right now we're assessing the extent of, is it a problem and how big of a problem is it? So if someone is on Muir Beach seeking an Uber or Lyft, I'm not exactly sure the relation to the reservation system specifically. We've seen more visitors arriving to Muir Woods from San Francisco by taking an Uber or Lyft. That tends to be I don't know if I would call it popular, but it's definitely a mode of transportation to Muir Woods. We have spoken with those companies about the potential to put a geofence around Muir Woods that would essentially block their ability to take an Uber or Lyft or other rideshare to Muir Woods, and they were not interested in that approach. So we have taken a few efforts. Something we're very mindful of is that we don't want visitors to be stranded at Muir Woods, and there isn't cell service there. And the shuttle, when the shuttle is operating, and taxis do provide some relief to that issue. So right now we are trying to assess, are there more ride shares coming to Muir Woods than were historically or immediately before the reservation system took effect? And there hasn't been enough time to really evaluate that or to assess, is this a little problem where there are a handful of cars every day, or are there hundreds of cars every day? As we learn more about that, we can understand the type of approach we need to take. Hopefully that's enough of an answer for you.
You just said you didn't know.
But we can talk more for sure, and I'm open to ideas.
Okay. Yes?
I'm waiting for you. Go first.
Stand up.
No, I don't want to. Mia, when you said, you talked about a parking ambassador or something that had come to the parking lot at Muir Woods, and it worked out very well. Is that a permanent kind, you've got to realize that that has to be a permanent situation there. When that parking lot fills up, and nobody's out in Highway 1 telling them that it's full, and they begin to fill up the feet of road to the parking lot, it's a very dire situation if any emergency takes place. And there's no way to remedy that except to have that person out at Highway 1 permanently, or at least on the best days.
Thank you for observing it worked, and thanks for the recommendation. We find a way to continue something like that.
Okay, so, yes, sir.
Have you considered putting in a low-powered radio broadcaster system out there? A low-powered radio broadcaster that as soon as people...
Like a 710?
Yeah, like a 710 or something that would just say, you know, if you don't have a reservation, you know, these you're not going to get in, you know, or, you know, just to give information without using signs and things like that.
So when we looked at how to communicate reservations now needed, we of course came up with our famous posters that we've decorated the auditorium with. We enlisted the tour and travel. We posted on the web. We tried to get the word out every possible way we could, including putting a large number of signs on all the approach roads to Muir Woods, the CMS signage on the freeways, et cetera, et cetera. So we thought we kind of saturated the market to alert people that reservations were now needed. Now, once upon a time, we did explore with the state of California and the local emergency response units, one of those low frequency systems, and we even asked Point Reyes how theirs was working. And we learned that because of the topography at Muir Woods and on Panoramic Highway, that it would be ineffective, that there would be so many dead pockets, people would not be able to get the information when it needed to be effective. Because one of the goals of the reservation system was to catch people before they even left 101, and if they had to kind of wait and get into the Muir Woods system, then we were defeating one of the goals of reducing traffic congestion in Tam Valley, et cetera. So we explored it, and it wasn't the right technology for us. Now that doesn't mean that we're not going to continually market and get the word out, because our goal is that people really plan ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have an evacuation plan for the hundreds to thousands of visitors in the area in the Redwood Creek watershed when there's fire?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. And yeah, currently our evacuation plan is similar to what it is elsewhere, and that's, you know, close joint collaboration and cooperation with all of the agencies in the area that would be involved in something like that. So with, you know, Marin County Fire and the Sheriff's Office and others as that is. So there's always room for work and exercise with these, and so thank you for bringing that up.
Well, I live up on Panoramic, so I'm very curious
Yes.
as to what's going to happen when hundreds to 1,000 of my people are trying to move in the same direction. And they don't know the area at all, or the vulnerability or anything like that. So I was hoping for more clarification.
There's a lot of areas, as you know, in West Marin that are in the same shoes, with a lot of visitation, a lot of people coming out. So yeah, it's a very valid point. And thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, in the back there?
Yeah, thank you. I have three little questions. The first question I'd like to direct to Sally, which is on the tracking system for the numbers of people who are actually using the woods. Because from a local point of view, it's our experience that the counts aren't accurate. So perhaps you could elaborate and be very specific on how you're tracking the number of people who are entering, because they're simply not counting people in the morning, in the evenings, and we're not counting a lot of walk-ins. So how are you arriving at those numbers? That's my first question. It'd be really helpful to understand that better.
Do you want to answer the questions one at a time, or do you want
Yes,
to? Okay.
one at a time.
Happy to answer that question. So, the historically the way that
I'm sorry, she was taking the microphone away from me.
Okay, so the Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy, they are the Golden Gate National Recreation Areas Cooperating Association. They are the ones that work in the visitor center at the entrance of Muir Woods. They collect entrance fees on behalf of the National Park Service, and they have a very specific way that they collect data for everyone who enters the woods. So anyone walking in needs to is either checking in at the window, or at certain core hours of the day, there is a National Park Service staff member at a podium, and a visitor either has to show their pre-purchased entrance fee, or they have to pay the entrance fee. The Conservancy staff at the visitor center, they enter the data for every single child entering the park, even though they don't pay an entrance fee. They specifically count, if you go there and say you're on the senior pass, they'll ask you, how many are in your group, and if it's you and 2 other people entering the park in your group, even though you're not paying because you have the senior pass and your group is entering on your senior pass, they'll mark, 3 are entering on the senior pass. So they have a very specific data collection system that's been in effect for quite some time. I unfortunately don't know the exact number of years because I haven't been working at the park that long. But also with the pre-purchased entrance fees, so a visitor will make their parking reservation, and then they have the option to pre-purchase their entrance fees. They don't have to, but they can. So say I make my parking reservation and I say 2 adults and 2 children. So those are the number of people that I'm bringing to the park. And then when I arrive at the park, my reservation is scanned. And by scanning my reservation, that means that the 2 adults and 2 children that I pre-purchased online, because I used my reservation, that means those 4 people did enter the park. So I am personally the one that takes the Conservancy data that they collect on site and the pre-purchase data, and then I aggregate it, and that is the visitation numbers that we come up with. We also have a small escalation that we use for walk-ins. You can enter Muir Woods by walking down from Panoramic Highway and hiking in a few miles. So we have a small escalation for those visitors who we know aren't necessarily counted by, who are, those who aren't walking through the entrance arch. The other thing I'll mention is that we actually have more accurate data this past year than we have in the past, because the visitor center now opens at 8 a.m. and they're staffing that right at 8 a.m., whereas in previous years they didn't staff that till 9 a.m. So that 8 to 9 a.m. period, we actually have more accurate information on.
Oh, thank you. And between what hours are those counts taken?
Yes, that's from 8 a.m. to, I believe, a half hour before the park closes.
So we'd love to have a written announcement of that with more specificity. The second question that I have is, you mentioned that one of the successes of the program was lessening the impact on the local communities, and that the communities were feeling very positive about that. How exactly are you measuring that? What's the measurement for that element?
So I do not have hard data on that. What I have is feedback that we've heard through various feedback channels, and we have seen generally a lot of positive feedback. We do see some negative feedback as well, and we are all ears to that, but we have heard a lot of positive feedback, and That is based on anecdotal information, not, we do not have statistics on that.
Thank you, Sally. I appreciate the clarity of that. We're now looking at the possibility of an additional trail being built from a new bus depot at Muir Beach next to the Pelican Inn. What percentage of additional visitors are you expecting when that new trail is opened? How's that going to impact the total numbers of people visiting the parks?
That is outside of my scope, because I don't work in that division.
I don't know, I might be able to give you some idea. It's actually the new trail.
Can you come to the front so we don't?
Can you introduce yourself there? Larry Miranda, I'm the plant manager. But it's an extension, 1,300 feet extension of the existing Diaz Ridge Trail. So all it's going to do is come down by the Golden Gate Dairy and stop, it'll parallel the highway, and then folks can cross over right by, well, Highway 1, I guess, to connect with the Redwood Trail. So it's,
Yeah, I'm very clear on the project.
yeah.
What I want to know is what percentage of additional visitors are you anticipating since there was a Fonzie statement
I'm
about
not
this?
sure if
I think it's a
anybody.
reasonable question.
Sure, no, and I don't think, took it, Brian, maybe you can answer that question better than I can.
Thanks, Larry. Hi, I'm Brian Bales, the Chief of Planning at GTN, right? Good to see you. Good question. That question came up early on in our analysis, and we went back and did additional analysis to estimate the additional traffic that might go from Muir Beach on the trail all the way to Muir Woods. I don't have the exact number, but that is in the response to comments section in the Fonzie. We do, to conclude the Fonzie, to conclude that there was no significant impact, we did find that it was a minimal number.
Thank you. One further follow-up question.
Ryan, would you mind clarifying that this is not a new trail, it's reconstruction of the Redwood Creek Trail, and that there's no bus stop planned as part of that? Would you clarify that and confirm that?
There's no
Yeah,
bus
I
stop.
can confirm that. You know, we have, as Larry was, Rand, my colleague, was expressing, we have a little component of the trail that extends the Diaz Ridge Trail to connect with the Redwood Creek Trail, which basically takes the functional trail off of the side of Highway 1 onto an alignment that is also parallel. The trail through the Redwood Creek Trail, as you're familiar with, Kristen, it is an existing trail. And this project would basically realign it from its current location, which has some impacts associated with visitor use on the Redwood Creek itself. So it's not a new trail, it's just improving the connection, and some of that's for safety, some of that's for the experience as well. As you know, a lot of our equestrian visitors and our partners at the stables are looking forward to this happening as well.
Thank you. My third question really has to do with safety. The question was raised about fire. At Muir Beach, we've actually done a lot of research in terms of how many people we can take care of when the road is blocked. And the maximum number that we can handle overnight in terms of water supplies, etc., is about 2,000 people. So if there is a fire in the area and there is no evacuation plan, there's a profound level of concern both at Muir Beach and, of course, at Panoramic. It's our understanding that there is no evacuation plan. We really are going to want to see one. The second question with respect to safety is water around that. We have a scarcity of water in the area, and we're looking at adding increased transportation and increased visitation without essentially having any plumbing or water supplies at the beach. So I'm wondering what consideration has been given to water
walking, say, from the Pelican Inn to, and I'm not even mentioning poop, of course, but, that are taking that 3-mile walk, what's the water supply going to be along the way? And you have a suggestion for the answer?
I may not be quite understanding the concern. There's no water that's supplied to visitors at Muir Beach. We're very conscious of that. We don't have flush toilets there. And I believe we did that action after recognizing just how much water was being consumed by visitors at Muir Beach. We encourage people to bring their own water. All the water that's utilized at Muir Woods comes from the other side of the hill, and it's actually pumped back over the other side of the hill, so we don't see our visitors having any impact on the water supplies in Redwood Creek. We are concerned though about water quality in the creek and the water quantity in the creek, and I know we're working with Muir Beach CSD to address some issues associated with that as well. It is a finite resource, and we share the concerns.
I think we answered the question earlier, and that is we have that same issue of any two-lane road in the county, that we would work on an interagency level, and that we have one our piece, and so I don't think we have a different answer than we gave you earlier. I want to give everybody a chance to talk to any of the folks on an individual basis. We're going to close our question and answers, and we really thank everybody for coming.